Hey everybody. So yesterday we had our first in-season trade of this NHL season, and it was between the Colorado Avalanche and the Minnesota Wild. It was kind of an interesting trade. They swapped third pair defensemen, Ian Cole going from the Avalanche to the Minnesota, and Greg Pateryn coming back to the Colorado Avalanche. So it was an interesting deal, not one that you really see all that often where they swap veteran third pair D-men. But I think as we look deeper into it, you can kind of understand the thinking here for this deal for both teams and what they're trying to do. So before we fully get into it, I just ask that you subscribe, hit that thumbs up button if you haven't. Both of those things help out so much and are greatly appreciated. But let's take a look at this from each team's perspective here on why they might have made this trade. So if you're the Colorado Avalanche, you have Ian Cole, who's a third pair D-man on your team. You have a very deep and strong defense. And Cole is making $3.45 million per season, last year of his contract. And you send him to the Minnesota Wild and get Greg Pateryn back in return, who has also last year of his contract and is making $2.25 million. So I think for the Avalanche here, they look at Greg Pateryn as kind of being able to do the same things on the ice as Ian Cole. They're very similar players as far as style. They're both veteran guys. They've both been in the league for a while now. Cole has 2 Stanley Cup rings coming from, with the Pittsburgh Penguins back in 2016 and 2017. So the experience level is there for both of them, but the playoff experience level certainly favors Ian Cole. That's going to play into why I think Minnesota made this deal when we look ahead to that. But from a Colorado standpoint, if you're just simply looking at how they play on the ice, they're both kind of defensive-minded veteran D-men who play on the third pair. So I think if you're Colorado here, you look at this as a cheaper option for a guy who does pretty much the same thing. So they got rid of Cole's $3.45 million and they brought in Pateryn's $2.25 million and basically think they have a very similar players there. That's going to come up big come the trade deadline, and I think that's the main reason Colorado wanted to do this deal, and Joe Sakic is thinking ahead here. This opened up about $1.2 million more in cap space for the Colorado Avalanche that they will now be able to use at the trade deadline if they're looking to add one more piece and make a deep playoff run, and probably in their case is trying to make a Stanley Cup run. This gives them a little bit more cap flexibility. Now let's switch over to the Minnesota Wild. Why do they do this deal? Experience. Ian Cole is experienced not only in the regular season but also in the playoffs, and he has been on teams that have made deep playoff runs, including the 2 Stanley Cup runs in 16 and 17 for the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Minnesota Wild crave that playoff experience, and they're a team that when they do get into the playoffs generally loses first round. They haven't been able to make any sort of deep playoff run in recent history, and they're a team that's at this point is just going to be fighting for a playoff spot. So they're hoping to make the playoffs this year, and when they do get in, they're hoping to be able to win in the postseason for the first time in a while and actually make some sort of run. The experience that Ian Cole has in doing that and making playoff runs is going to be very, very valuable to the Minnesota Wild locker room, because that's a team without a lot of guys who have that kind of playoff experience. So this is a real experience and veteran upgrade for the Minnesota Wild from a locker room point of view. Again, on the ice, I think they're very similar players. And that's why Colorado was like, okay, we'll take the cheaper of this very similar players. And for Minnesota, they want that experience. They want those Stanley Cup winning guys in the room. And that's a valuable addition to their team from an experience standpoint. So when you look at this, I think Colorado, they look at this as kind of them being very, almost not the exact same player, but very similar players. Colorado gets a cheaper one, which gives them more flexibility at the trade deadline to make some sort of move. And then Minnesota gets the guy with more playoff experience in the Stanley Cups, and they're willing to pay a little bit more for that and add him to their decor. So at the end of the day, it's a swap of veteran third pair defensemen, but each of them bring their value to the lineup and to the team. And I think, we somewhat understand why this trade was made, and both of these teams were willing to part with what they parted with and bring in each particular guy. So for Colorado, it's about the money, I think, in the cap space heading into the trade deadline, and for Minnesota, it's about the experience in the room. So that is my opinion on the Ian Cole for Greg Pateryn trade. I think it was, a pretty solid deal, and not a blockbuster or anything like that, but a swapping of veteran guys who have been in the league for a while. So with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon merchandise store and donation link are in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you guys soon.